absolutely loved open air work. Even before I'd heard of the open air mission in the church that I grew up in, we used to do regular open air meetings. And of all the forms of evangelism that we used to do, open air work was just my absolute favourite. So when I heard of the open air mission and when I heard of the trainee scheme, I thought that's for me. I have to do that.
From about the age of 17, I went on beach missions, and open air work was new to me. And I went on these beach missions, and I enjoyed the open air work on beach missions, and so I would go each year enjoying it, and then eventually I wanted to do more throughout the year, so I joined the Liverpool week, and it was put to me that perhaps I might be interested in the trainee year. So I thought about whether or not I wanted to go and do a year of solid open airs, and I felt it was of the Lord that there was this kind of growing love and burden for open air work, and I wanted the opportunity to learn how to do it better and kind of grow in that area.
Before becoming a Christian as a teenager, the only time I'd really encountered Christianity was at school, and when I'd be wandering around town with friends and seeing Christians preach. So when I became a Christian, I went to a church that was doing open air work, and I thought that's what all Christians do. So I started doing that and had some early encouragements with friends stopping and talking to me about my faith, and just over time a desire developed there to make Jesus known, and the trainee scheme was suggested to me.
I applied to be a trainee for the open air mission because I wanted to do some evangelism work after finishing college. I wanted to do the scheme because I had a desire to share the gospel. Around the time I was at college, the Lord saved me, and I wanted to share the gospel with people, and sometimes I'd go into the town when I didn't have a lesson and try and share the gospel with different people and hand out literature.
So during the year you would work alongside a number of the evangelists in the open air mission. There's kind of the regular open airs that happen throughout the year in the different areas where the different men work, and then over the summer months particularly you'll have team events, and you'll go on team events and experience that.
The trainee year involved for me spending 6 months in Bournemouth and 6 months in Abingdon, and I was shadowing 2 evangelists, going out regularly into the open air with them, and going to church events and things like that, and also going on team events with other evangelists and just people who had joined the team.
You don't stay with the evangelist the whole year, you go with different evangelists, so you get that experience of learning from different people. There are different aspects to the trainee scheme, so there's the open air work, but I've also done children's work, so I had that experience.
Alongside that as well, there's a study course, so kind of broadening your biblical knowledge and kind of theological understanding as well. So I enjoyed both aspects.
For me, the most challenging thing was being away from home. I'd never lived away from home. I was 21, and for me, just being away from my family, away from my church, away from my friends, was hard. I did make new friends and had a good time, but that was the big challenge.
I'm not really a natural public speaker, so when you talk about things I found difficult, I found probably most of it quite difficult, and kind of being pushed out my comfort zone to stand in front of a group of people, either a street full who are passing by, or a kind of an assembly with people listening attentively, or looking at least. So kind of the nerves I found was quite difficult, but it was helpful to have someone there alongside me to encourage me and to help me kind of push through that and learn ways to overcome that.
It took me out of my comfort zone in a lot of areas, particularly working with people one-to-one, the kind of personal conversations. That for me took a long time to really learn to do and feel confident doing. So I remember explaining to my mentor at the time that I felt really awkward and really bad at having one-to-one conversations. And so I was looking for some real golden advice to hang my hat on. And he just prayed with me, and I felt quite disappointed. And then that day, while I was handing out leaflets, this group of about 5 or 7 teenagers just made a beeline for me, and ended up having the best conversation with them, which really encouraged me to not be worried about what I'm doing, but let God do it and work through me in that way.
I think the big blessing for me was seeing God at work in me. I think it was a real transformative year. I was challenged in ways I wasn't expecting, and being able to actually see God working in the open air. And through the mission, I was introduced to a completely new way of doing open air work, and actually just seeing how people were stopping to hear the Bible preached and to hear about Jesus was just really thrilling to me. So that was the greatest blessing.
The blessing of trainee year for me was being up close and seeing not only how experienced evangelists preached in the open air, but how they walked with the Lord. And I remember just learning and being impressed so much by their prayer lives, their dependence on God, their desire to be in His Word and have Him speak to them before they went and spoke to others. And that really had a long-lasting impression on me.
One thing I've learned from being a trainee is how to be better at public speaking, how to project your voice and speak more clearer. And it's helped me in being able to be bolder in public speaking.
As a pastor, Neil, I think I still draw on a lot of the lessons I learned from preaching in the open air. And often actually with some of the guys in my church who I train to preach, the first place I get them to preach is in the open air. Because if you can hold people's attention on the streets, then actually in church, though it's slightly different obviously at preaching in church, actually some of those tools that you learn there really do enable you to preach indoors as well.
One of the things that it showed me was that it was something I wanted to do long term, full time in the future, and I continued after my trainee year to pray over it, and I looked for an opportunity, and eventually a few years later an opportunity arose to go full time, and I think the trainee year was very helpful in that kind of path.
The year as a trainee has impacted my present work as a pastor, I think, in a variety of ways, in giving me a desire to have an emphasis on evangelism, to try and preach the gospel in every sermon that I preach to the congregation, and to be conscious of the reality that it's important to preach in an engaging way. Wouldn't claim I hit that every time, but in the open air, people will vote with their feet. It's not quite the same in church, but they do vote with their minds, and so that's always my experiences in the open air have always made me conscious of that need to seek to be engaging in the pulpit.
If there's anyone watching this video who is perhaps thinking that maybe the trainee year could be for them, but they are unsure or they've got questions, I'd recommend getting in touch with the Open Air Mission and speaking to some of the guys in the office, and maybe even trying to get in touch with some of us former trainees. If you have a desire to share the gospel and you want to grow and learn from experienced evangelists, then I would say definitely get involved and look as a viable option.
I would say if you give a year to being a trainee evangelist, you won't regret it. It's a brilliant year. You'll learn lots. You will be challenged. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Nothing in life that's really worth it is easy often. So I would say go for it.